Hello everybody, it's still card review season, and it's been a few days, so a couple new cards are out, and it's time to go over them. So we left off last time on the Messenger Raven, so what comes after that is Lightforged Blessing, the 2-mana Paladin spell. It's common, twin spell, give a friendly minion lifesteal. I think this is interesting. I think that 2 might be too expensive for lifesteal, but at the same time, I mean, even 4 mana can't give 2 things lifesteal is like way too expensive. But I guess for the for a little flexibility, it's a little bit better. For Paladin, I guess this works a little bit better as well because they're really into that whole self-hurt thing from Rastakhan, so this gives that a little bit more utility. I'm sort of on the fence about it. I don't think it's like good or bad. I think it's just sort of meh, which sort of fits with common cards. I think that it's very situational, but if you're going for that self-hurt Paladin style, you could find a way to make this work, especially with the tigers. You summon a 6/6 tiger somehow, and then you give this thing lifesteal, you get another like 2/2 tiger, and then the big 6/6 has lifesteal, and yeah, you could do a few fun things with it. It's just sort of an okay card. What's interesting to me is that the symbol that the light is giving this Draenei is the Kirin Tor symbol, and you don't traditionally see the Kirin Tor dealing with the light too often. So I think that's kind of neat. Anyway, next, Unleash the Beast. Hunter spell, 6 mana, twin spell, summon a 5/5 Wyvern with Rush. 5/5 with Rush for 6 is okay. Again, this is just sort of an okay card. It's not great. It's not terrible. If you're going for a spell hunter, it's fine. If you're going for a beast hunter, it could also be fine, because I believe the Wyvern is going to be a beast. So having a beast rush synergy is perfectly fine. I like how this is a Kirin Tor Wyvern again, and it's attacking Rafam's imps, which is exactly what it would probably do. Like, this thing would eat quite a few imps in that archetype. So yeah, just another sort of okay card. Next, Keeper Stelandris. Druid legendary, 2 mana, 2/3. After you cast a choose one spell, add a copy of both choices to your hand. So this is kind of a worst Faendal Staghelm, but in the same vein, it's still sort of a Staghelm effect. So it's about as useful as he was. It's weaker than he was, and the effect is weaker than he was. But yeah. In any world where Faendril was played, this would also be played. So yeah, I think it's fine. It's a perfectly I think it's kind of meh. I really do. I think all of these so far have been, definitely not terrible cards. They're not cards that I question, why does this exist? But they're not amazing. They're just sort of eh. Alright, next. Never Surrender, Paladin spell. 1 mana secret. When your opponent casts a spell, give your minions +2 health. I like this secret. It's a pretty good one. Yeah, it's only 1 mana. It's a secret, and it gives +2 health to all of your minions and not just one. So yeah, I think it's all around pretty neat. I think it's probably right around the same usefulness as the on your turn, give all your minions +1/+1, which did see a whole lot of play, and still sees some play in Wild. Excuse me. But yeah, I think it's right around there. I think it's straight up good. I don't think it's meta defining by any means. It's a conditional that isn't guaranteed to happen all the time. But the effect is pretty nice. And really, I think this is almost a straight-up counter to a lot of board clear. So, I mean, this would go well with like a Silverhand Recruit sort of deck, if such a deck were still around. I guess in Wild you would play this, because in that case it would just straight up counter a board clear, which is cool. Next. The Evil Genius. Warlock cards, 2 mana 2/2 battlecry, destroy a friendly minion, add 2 lackeys to your hand. Very token warlock thing, which is what they're kind of pushing right now. That being the case, I guess this is a use for Rafam's scheme, because you make a whole bunch of useless 1/1 imps, and then you use this to essentially turn those imps into lackeys, which makes them infinitely more useful. But realistically, yeah, you'd probably do some token stuff, maybe some egg stuff, and, just do your normal token warlock sort of thing, except instead of using it for discard, you're back to using it with just flooding the board with stuff and getting those destroy friendly minion buffs off. And this going into the lackeys thing, all the better. I like this card. I think it's pretty alright. Next, the Evil Conscriptor. 2 mana 2/2 death rattle, add a lackey to your hand. So this is like the priest's version of this. Like they're the same stats and everything. It's just one is a death rattle and one is a battlecry destroy friendly minions. So they're basically the same thing. They follow like their particular class's like theme. Like priest is pretty good with death rattle. They're losing their quest, but I mean there's still some good death rattle synergy to be gotten off of priest. So that one gets the death rattle, that one gets the battlecry destroy friendly minion. And I feel the exact same way. I think it's perfectly fine. Really, I don't know what priest is going to do with lackeys, so I don't know how useful this is really going to be. So far, priest doesn't seem to care too much about lackeys, so they might get less use of it than other classes will. But we'll just have to wait and see. Like, even with warlock like this, even if they have nothing else to do with lackeys, Rafam will turn those lackeys into legendaries, which, that's already good enough. Turning 1 minion on the board into 2 in your hand that you turn into legendaries down the line, or can have some situational use while you're getting up there, perfectly fine. I don't know what priests are going to do with lackeys, so that kind of depends on how, like, whatever that's going to be will determine whether or not this card is good. Next, Variso Windrunner. Hunter legendary, 7 mana 5/6 battlecry, equip Thoradal the Star's Fury. And what that is a 2/3 bow that gives you +2 spell damage every time you attack with it. And that's pretty neat. Hunter, while it had all these spells, never really had a whole lot of spell damage to go with it. This definitely does give that sort of Kirin Tor flavor where it's like a mage and a hunter coming together, and it's like, oh, I do spells. Oh, I also do spells. Well, how come you don't empower your spells? Oh, well, I've never really known how to. I'm a hunter, not a mage. Well, let me show you a few tricks. And then we get this. Yeah. I think the legendary on its own, the 7 mana 5/6 is understated, but really you just want it for that bow, for some spell hunter shenanigans, even if it's just sort of a mix. Like, you're not going full spell hunter, but you've got some good spells in there, and you add Verisa in. And I think that works out pretty well. Next. The Hench Clan Hogsteed. 2 mana 2/1 rush, death rattle, summon a 1/1 Murloc. So it's a beast that summons a Murloc. I'm not really a fan of this thing being rush. I think it would have been better with charge. I know Blizzard is afraid of charge now, but I definitely think this would have been better off as a charge than a rush. Like, don't get me wrong, it's still okay. It's essentially a 2 mana 3/2 with 2 of it being a rush. So the idea is you play it, it's a 2/1, you run it into something and it dies, and you're left with a 1/1. So your board isn't entirely dead. It's fine. There isn't a whole lot of Murloc synergy out right now, so The fact that it leaves behind a Murloc is kind of pointless. It's just a 1/1, really. And that's fine. Like, there's so many other things that we already have right now that are better than this. But they're all in classes while this is neutral. So, you know, it's not great. You'll probably toss it. It's just sort of a meh card. Next. Geppetto Joybuzz, neutral legendary, 8 mana, 6/6, battlecry, draw 2 minions from your deck, set their attack, health, and cost to 1. Geppetto Joybuzz, the toy maker of Dalaran. 8 mana, 6/6 is kind of crap, but you do draw 2 minions from your deck and set their everything to 1. So, if you care more about their battlecry or their death rattle than their actual stats, then that's good. But if you end up getting something where it's like, oh man, I really wanted it for its stats, that's really bad. I think this is sort of a randomonium meme sort of card. I don't think it's going to see all that much play. I guess you could get some sick Hakar combos off of it, play it on turn 9 instead of turn 10. Or, like, draw it from your deck if you haven't already. But, otherwise, I guess it could also be good drawing Rafam. Because Rafam, you care way more about the effect. Yeah, the 7/8 body with taunt is great, but you care more about the effect, really. So I guess if you haven't drawn it yet, you could use this to get it, but I don't know. I think it's a meme. Next. Dragon Speaker Paladin, 5 mana, 3/5, battlecry, give all dragons in your hand +3/+3. That's interesting. A Dragon Paladin thing was tried way back around the same time that Dragon Priest was a thing. And it survived a little bit longer than Dragon Priest because it didn't lose as many of its like core features. Not that it had many to begin with. Like, it was less successful than Dragon Priest, but because it was less successful when those cards were taken away, it took longer to die out than Dragon Priest did. I don't know. 5 mana 3/5 is blacky. But that give all dragons in your hand +3/+3. If there are 2, maybe 3 dragons in your hand, that's totally worth it. Especially if they're not like the big legendary ones. If there are some mediocre or some normal ones that aren't like Ysera and Alexstrasza that are already huge, if you get like a fairy dragon, like have a fairy dragon, have it be a 2-cost 6/5, that's pretty good. So I think it really depends, but I could definitely see a world where this gets played. Next, the Bronze Herald Paladin card, 3 mana, 3/2, Death Rattle, add 2 4/4 dragons to your hand. Hey! It's basically Fairy Dragon, except it costs more and has a Death Rattle of putting 2 4/4s in your hands that are dragons. So you put this in with that. I assume the 4/4s cost 4 as well. So you could go Bronze Herald, one of the 4/4s, this thing, and the other 4/4 is now a 7/7, and theoretically you would have other dragons in your hand as well. So as long as you have like 1 or 2 others in along with that 4/4, then that's a really good like on curve turn, 3, 4, 5, and then onward with like some really, really good dragons. These 2 cards really make me think that Dragon Paladin could be a thing, but it needs like maybe 2 more. If we get 2 more cards, they don't even have to be good cards. If we get like 1 okay card like these 2 and 1 bad card, or we get 1 really good one and 1 trash one, then I could still see Dragon Paladin becoming a thing, and I'd be all about that. I think that's a great idea. More bronze dragons! We don't have nearly enough bronze dragon representation. We had the infinite dragons in an arena, and that was fine, but I want more bronze dragons in Hearthstone. I love the bronze dragon flight. More of them, please. Next. Mass Resurrect. Priest spell, 9 mana. Summoned 3 friendly minions that died this game. It's just a straight up worse Spellstone now that Spellstone is going away. No. Spellstone really didn't see all that much play anyway. Like, yeah, this takes away the cost of the Spellstone, like the requirements of building up the Spellstone. But I don't know. The fact that it costs more as well. I don't know. Plus, the Spellstone really wasn't played all that much anymore anyway. I don't know. Maybe. Next. The Sludge Slurper. Shaman Murloc. 1 mana 2/1. Battlecry. Add a lackey to your hand. Overload 1. Oh. That overload, really? This didn't need an overload. 1 mana 2/1 is perfectly fine. Battlecry, add a 1/1 to your hand is also totally fine for a 1 cost. This didn't need that overload. I guess if you're going with some overload synergy, it's good. And I guess even still at 1 mana, it's not terrible. The Murloc synergy is pointless. Ugh. I think this is another card like the Henge Clan Burglar, where it's trying to fit into 2 different decks, and because of that, it really doesn't fit into either. I could see this being played if Lackey meant more in Shaman, but right now we haven't seen a reason for Shaman to care about Lackeys too much. So, right now, I'm going to say no. But if we see a reason for Shamans to have Lackeys, then maybe I'll change my mind. This is definitely worse than the other 2. Because, yeah, both of those costed 2, but they were also 2/2, and they didn't have Overload. Overload is such a bad mechanic for this. Like, I'm sorry. 1 mana and then Overload 1 mana is not equivalent to 2 mana. Because it screws up your next turn. Like, you couldn't play this on turn 1. You couldn't play this on turn 2. Well, maybe you could play this on turn 2, but then your turn 3 is totally screwed, and your turn 2 is screwed unless you have another 1 cost, unless you're playing that Lackey right away. But why would you do that? There's no... I mean, I guess you could transform this into something bigger, another 2 cost. I don't know. Like, there's a lot of argument that could be said about this card, whether or not it's good, but right now I'm going to say it really hinges on whether or not Shaman wants Lackey. Like, I could toss this around in my head all day. This is a difficult one for me. Anyway, we're going to move on. The Crystal Stag, 5 mana 4/4 Beast for Druid. Rush, Battlecry, if you've restored 5 health this game, summon a copy. I really like the idea of a Resto Druid being a thing, but this is the first time we've gotten any sort of health synergy from Druid, except for back in, well, no. No. This is the first time. I was thinking about the Moonglade one. It's like, well, technically you're healing yourself and summoning a minion, so you could say there's some synergy there, but not like this, you know? Difference. If we see more, I would totally be up for a Resto Druid sort of deck, because, you know, I really liked Heal Priest back then, like back last year, and, like, I main Resto Druid in World of Warcraft, so if we could get a Resto Druid sort of build in Hearthstone, I would play that to death. I would love that. But this being the first card we've seen having that, it's not even close to good enough. It's understated. I mean, if you summon 2 of them, fine. 5 mana 8/8 with Rush is pretty darn good. But right now, there isn't a whole lot of ways for Druid to heal themselves except for some mediocre cards. And playing those mediocre cards just to make this one good isn't good enough. We need more of a reason. Like, I think I've gotten it down to a science at this point where if you want a meta to work, like if you want a design like this to work, like, you know, the new Dr. Boom thing to work, or the Dragon Paladin thing to work, or, you know, any new thing you want to work, you need to put in 4 cards right away. With one of those cards being, like, the win condition, and 3 of those being build-ups. It doesn't matter if they're good build-ups, but they have to be build-ups. This is a build-up, and we've got no win condition. So, if we get a win condition and 2 more cards, I could totally see it being played. But right now, no. Next. Crystal Power. I believe this is the last one. Druid spell 1 mana, choose 1, deal 2 damage to a minion, or restore 5 health. Ha ha, right away. We got a second one. We've got a restore 5 health as a choose 1, and we've got the Crystal Stag. So that's 2. Now all we need is a win condition and a 3rd card. And no, Stelandris doesn't count. Stelandris combos off of this because of the choose 1 mechanic. So, yes, it could work with that, but it's not explicitly going towards that. Don't get me wrong, a Resto Druid would want Stelandris in it. But, you know, so would any Druid that, you know, is using a lot of choose 1s. So, I'm not counting that one. And it's also not a win condition. It's a legendary that isn't a win condition. Like, it's fine that it's a legendary and it's not a win condition, but if they're trying to make it the win condition for this Resto Druid idea, it's not. It needs a win condition. Like, I don't know, a 5 mana 1/1 with Rush. Give this minion +1/+1 for every health you've restored this game. So just with this, it can become like a 15/15 or something. Like, something like that. You know, it's got Rush, so it's not going to kill the opponent in 1 turn, but it's a big, scary minion. Sort of along the same veins as the Mulch Muncher. Except that was a cost thing. I think if it's going to be health, it needs to be a attack and defense thing. Like a attack and health thing. Just to make it like a bigger and bigger and bigger minion. Like an ancient... And a Tree of Life... Well, they've already had the Tree of Life thing, but sort of along the same vein. Like a legendary Ancient of Life has +1/+1 for every health you've restored. And maybe it's got Taunt instead of Rush. You know, something big that can easily be dealt with a kill card, but is big and scary and based off of your health, so it can be a pseudo-win condition. That would be great. It's like, it wouldn't be game-breaking, it wouldn't even necessarily be good, but it would be a win condition for a Resto Druid. Just enough that someone, me, would play it. Alright, so... Now that that's over, I'm going to do my thumbs. Let's go. So, Lightforged Blessing, maybe. It depends on how much Self-Hurt Paladin continues on into the next year. Unleash the Beast, I'm going to say... I'm going to give it a tentative yes. I probably should give it a maybe. It's a little bit too expensive, but having a 5/5 with Rush is pretty darn good, especially for Hunter. Keeper Stelandris, I'm going to say maybe as well. It's small, it's weak, it's straight up worse than a previous card we've had, but it's a previous card that we don't have this year, so maybe it'll find a home. Never Surrender, I'm going to say yes. I think it's just a straight up good Paladin secret, and it has the potential to be a counter for board clear, which is nice. Next, the Evil Genius, I'm going to say yes. I think it's probably my favorite of these small 2 mana 2/2 things that give you lackeys. I think it's going to be good, and I think it might just... I think it jokingly makes Rafam's scheme better. Evil Conscriptor, I'm going to say maybe. It depends entirely on what priests do with lackeys. We don't know yet. Verisa Windrunner, I'm going to say yes. She's a little weak for the cost, but giving Hunter spell damage is dangerous, and she does it 3 times. So, oof. Hench Clan Hogsteed, I'm going to say no. There's really no reason for this card to exist, except that it's kind of cute, I guess. The little Murloc is kind of cute. Moving on, Geppetto Joybuzz, I say no. I think it's a meme. I probably should say maybe, because there are good, legitimate, like, reasons to play this card. I just don't. I think it's a meme. Next, Dragon Speaker. I'm gonna say maybe. I like the idea of a paladin, of a dragon paladin, dragon warrior. Just sort of like was a little rocky, and people wanted it to work, and it just it almost works. And I think it needs a little bit more attention to get there. I think it will get there in the Year of the Dragon. But it's not there yet. I think Dragon Paladin would also be pretty fun. So I'm going to say maybe. I hope so. Next, the Bronze Herald. I'm going to say yes, although I'm tentative about the Paladin Dragon thing. I think that while the card itself is sort of weak, adding 2 4-cost 4/4s to your hand is pretty good for any sort of Paladin, because hand buffing is still sort of kind of a thing. It's not great, but it is still there, and 4-mana 4/4 is still just, like, fine. Like, it's not Yeti stats quite, but it's fine. Mass Resurrection, I'm going to say maybe, but I'm pessimistic about it. I think it's too expensive, and I think it's just a straight-up worse Spellstone, and Spellstone doesn't see a whole lot of play. Sludge Slurper, I'm gonna say no. It's my least favorite of these lackey cards. I don't like it. I just don't like it. Crystal Stag, I'm going to say maybe. It's a very hopeful maybe for me, because I really want Resto Druid to be a thing. Right now, it doesn't have quite enough to be a thing, but maybe in the future, I really hope they give it a fair shot. We need more cards and a win condition. Crystal Power, I'm going to say ditto. While the deal 2 damage for 1 mana is good, and the restore 5 health for 1 mana is fine, you know what? I'm actually going to upgrade it. I think this is the first time I'm actually going to upgrade something. I'm going to say yes. I think both of these choose ones are good. And if you draw it later, you can use it with Tellerandrus. And hey, restoring 5 health is always a good thing. It can be sort of a dead card in the late game, but you know what? 5 health is hard to argue with. So, yeah, I'm actually going to say yes. Alright, goodbye everybody.